సరిగ్గా కనిపించట్లేదు ఇక్కడ. కనిపిస్తుందా? Good evening, online students. Charanpreet Kaur, good evening. Is it audible, visible? Kritika, good evening. Okay. So, Sohini Biswas, good evening. Kritika, I think it's you who asked these reference books. So let us have a look at these reference books. Story of Civilization, NCERT book. One minute. Next one is Contemporary World History. Old NCERT book. Mastering Modern History, Norman Low. It is a standard book. Mastering Modern World History. Then NCERT books for history. It could be from 11th Themes in World History is the recommended World History in NCERT book for UPSC. History of Modern World, B.V. Rao. History of Modern World, B.V. Rao. Good evening, Fisher. History of Modern World, Jain, Mathur. Jain and Mathur. Okay. So you may take note of this. They are suffice for your preparation. But what I would suggest you is, most of the people what they suggest is, you select a few books and then read them many times. Instead of selecting many books and then reading not enough is not going to help us. Reading a few books many times will be good strategy for UPSC preparation. Okay. And then this is the last class for world history. We may discuss another topics, but for as far as world history is, this is the last topic. We have three small topics. Actually we were about to end problems in Africa. Then we will be discussing communism and socialism. And there is one more topic. Kritika, thank you very much. Then that last topic is populations, but world populations we may not be discussing that. That's not very important from the exam point of view. So I will try to maximum complete this socialism, communalism and the difference also. They are important. Actually we need to understand the difference. We have discussed those terms, but we will be discussing in elaborate way. So, let us discuss problems in Africa. This is where we were discussing. We discussed it up to here. The current challenges in Africa. We all know that Africa is very much lagging behind in many of the aspects, whether it is technology, education, healthcare, infrastructure. Very interestingly, Africa is a continent full of natural resources. You got a lot of natural resources, and those African countries are not able to use those natural resources. So, what are the current challenges in Africa? Application of the anti-development SAP dogmas in the 1990s ushered in, that means they started in 2 decades of deepening indebtedness. That means they are actually into debt trap by Western countries and countries like China. Now China is lending a lot of money to African countries, and then when they are not able to pay, China knows that they are not able to pay it, then they take any of the natural resources, mines or something like that. Deindustrialization. So, instead of industrialization, what is happening is deindustrialization. Socio-economic decline, whether it is a social point of view or economic point of view, there is no growth. Then poverty, political repression. Political repression means those who are actually powerful and influential are not giving opportunity to other people, whether it is a middle class people or poor people or any other sections of the society. There is no equal opportunity for the repressed sections of the or marginalized sections of the society. On the other hand, the period also saw upsurge of popular democratization struggles, civil rights campaigns, restoration of democracy, the establishment of electoral democracy, the decline of military interventions. This is important. Most of the Western countries and other countries tries to intervene in these foreign matters. It could be America or USA or USA or USSR or even European countries. They try to involve in one way or other, or we have already discussed neo-colonialism also. So, they all have to, they have to put end to all these things, and then there is some sort of a ray of hope for democratization, democratic struggles, and then civil rights campaigns. These are all good signs, but the point is, how long lasting are they going to be? What kind of impact are they going to have? What kind of outcome we are going to see because of all this? Then, what are the economic problems? Economic problems. Africa's current economic growth rate is too low. if you leave this discussion, I mean, for example, if you see MNC companies like Amazon, Apple, okay, Google, Facebook, all these companies, Microsoft, their revenue is far more than these African countries. And to put it in a different way, if you put together the GDP of all the African countries, okay, they may not be equal to some of the countries, equal to these big companies, because now they have become 1 trillion companies. It's not about billions now. Apple and Microsoft, okay, then Tesla, all these companies have become 1 trillion companies. So, this country's GDP is not equal to those companies. Sometimes those companies can dictate the policies of the countries also. Of course, here there is no need of discussion of those companies, but my point is those companies' revenue is far, okay, more than this GDP of these countries, and when they do business, they can dictate the policies of these countries also. But we have already discussed, they have a lot of natural resources, they should use it. So, now see, sub-Saharan African GDP per capita is 1036. Even our per capita is not great. Okay, you leave alone African, our per capita is somewhere $1,900, not even 2000. Very interestingly, Bangladesh has overtaken India. Bangladesh has overtaken India's per capita. Earlier, Sri Lanka was doing very well. Many people don't know that Sri Lanka was the country which was doing very well in this South Asia. If you see Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka was doing very well on different parameters, but unfortunately they are now in crisis. And then at 1.4 growth rate estimated for 2015, it would take Africa 50 years to double GDP per capita. I think you all know what is per capita. So, total revenue or income of the country divided by number of the people. But in a country like India, if you see per capita does not reflect the distribution of the wealth. You understand? There may be so many people who are earning less than $1,900. Many people may be earning, but when you see total wealth divided by the people, this is what we get India around $1,900. But there are so many beggars. So, that is the beauty of our country. We have a lot of billionaires as well as beggars. That is what democracy fails. The biggest problem with the democracy is the difference between haves and have-nots is too heavy. I mean, there is a lot of gap. That is what we say, disparities in wealth or uneven wealth distribution. Now, imminent changes to the architecture of global trade, okay, will disadvantage African countries. Trans-Pacific Partnership (TPP), Transatlantic Trade Investment Partnership (TTIP), neither of which includes sub-Saharan African countries, will offset many of the trade benefits African countries currently enjoy under America's Africa Growth Opportunity Act. African industrial development has been stalled since 1970. Okay, there was some sort of growth up to 1970, but from there 1970 there is no growth at all. Only 1 in 5 workers in Africa has a job. 1 out of 5 have got job. Unemployment is a very big problem in Africa. Africa has made little headway in growing export oriented industries. Okay, they are always importing. Exports are not equal, not even close to imports. So, the growth of the country depends on how much you export. When there is a lot of gap, that is a big problem. You have to depend on other countries for everything. Then what are social issues? The lives of most Africans are marred by poverty. Here marred by means the lives of them, they are disturbed by poverty, hunger, poor education, ill health and violence. Although the poverty rate in Africa has dropped in recent year, population increase is one thing that is concern for African country. So, when population is increasing, wealth is constant without any growth. So, although it seems like poverty is dropping, because of the population, poverty continues, poverty increases. So, that is a big problem even India also. If you see Asian countries, population is a problem, but European countries and countries like Japan, they need a lot of population. Even take America also, they need population. That is why as they do not have enough population, all migrants are going. They are migrating to those countries. So, population is asset. It depends on the country. If population is educated, if population is healthy, then that population is productive. Or otherwise, that population, you call it population explosion. You call it a population explosion. That is a not good sign for a development of the country. So, all Asian most of the countries, particularly we, of course, here it is not relevant, but this is a very important thing which we call it demographic dividend. Online students, Fiza, what is that marred? Can you answer online students, what is demographic dividend? Demographic dividend. Marred is a negative word. Okay. You can say that their life is disturbed or troubled by, that is how the meaning comes, marred. Online students, any idea about demographic dividend? So, more than 2 out of 5 African adults cannot read and write. Health outcomes are worse in Africa than anywhere else in the world. Tolerance of domestic violence is twice as high as in the rest of the developing world. And of late, people think domestic violence is only faced by women. It is not correct. Okay. Domestic violence is it is for all genders. Okay. Normally, people think that only it is faced by women. Okay. Of late, some people went to court and they even filed case. Okay. So, it itself says that there is gender equality and we are moving very fast towards gender equality. Okay. And we can see what we see that development in violence also. Okay, Fija, miserable. Now, what I say, their lives are troubled by all these problems. Okay, so demographic means related to population. How it can be a dividend? In the context of India, India has the greatest advantage, and but we are not able to make most out of it. For example, if you see Japan, okay, their population is not that great, and they are requesting, giving lot of incentives to Japan population, because they are too dedicated to their professions and work, not for families. So, there are no children, no population. That is a big problem. And other problem, it is not actually a problem. China and Japan and other countries, their healthcare is very good, and their lifestyle is even better than other countries. Lifestyle. So, what is happening is, life expectancy is very high in Japan. It is like more than 80. So, when people are on one side, there are less children are born. On the other side, healthcare is good, people are not dying. So, what happens? You see a lot of old people. The population is full of 80s, 70s like old people. So, from production and economy point of view, they are not that useful. Of course, they are our parents, they are our relatives, they are important, but from economy does not think all these things. Are they energetic? Are they participating in the economy? Are they contributing to the GDP? They are not. So, now you see, healthcare is good, and that has become disastrous for Japan. Okay. And you take India now, our healthcare is not that great, and our people are dying constantly, and it leaves Indian population, that is people somewhere between 18 to 35, you may call young people. Now, these days this is even changed to 40, 50 also. Okay. Now, old people means 80 now, old means 80 now, because all are living up to 80, 90 like that. So, now it is a new definition now. So, but 18 to 35 are more in India. Okay. Then if they are educated, if they are healthy, they are asset to country. And now it is our job and government's job to provide skills and provide good jobs. Through that we can contribute to GDP. This is the most burning topic. You may get in essays, you may get in different topics, that is demographic dividend. Of course, although it is not related to this topic, it is discussed everywhere in India. Big IITs, IIMs is a burning topic. How to make use of this demographic dividend? It is simple: education, healthcare. With that, you have to make these people more productive. So, this is actually an embarrassment and opportunity. Our healthcare is not good, that is why people are dying, but out of that embarrassment there is opportunity. You may call it what do we see? You see opportunity in adversity, that sort of a thing. Means productive age group is less in number. Yes, that is the case of Japan, but in India we are more. So, you can call India is a very young country. Young country means full of young people. Okay. Now, Health outcomes are worse than tolerance. Every year more Africans live in urban slums. When there is more population, what happens? Slums also increase. Life standards decrease. 400 million Africans lived in cities in 2010. 60% of those people lived in slums with no access to basic services. By 2050, that number is expected to grow 1.26 billion. Yes, Fija, advantage is disadvantage. For Japanese, not for us. For us, disadvantage is advantage. So now, political issues. A closer look at Africa's elected governments suggests that they are not different from autocratic regimes. We have already discussed. Very few countries in Africa are democratic, and most of the countries have single party system, or where elite people dictate, influence everything. So they are autocratic. A few people actually have a lot of authority. The elected ruling elites rely on intricate web of personal, family, clientelism, ethnic ties. So this is what they do. This is not democracy. A family, a person may dictate, a family may dictate, clients may dictate, ethnic ties, that means racial unity. A few race may dictate the country. In most African countries, elections are solution to the political legitimacy, but they do not provide answers to problems of state malfunction. That means most of the countries, dictatorship is not good. Then what is the solution? Democracy. So then they may have elections, they may select a government. Now you can say this is democracy. But don't think democracy is elixir of all problems or panacea of all diseases. It is not like that. Okay. For example, if you see there is a democracy, index. Okay. Again, it is not part of this, but it will be useful somewhere for you. In that survey, you have to go back to again Scandinavian countries. They perform very well. Whatever parameter you take, they perform very well. What are Scandinavian countries? Norway, Denmark, Finland, Iceland. These countries, Norway, I think they were first. Okay. So they are performing very well. And largest democracies, America and India. We are somewhere, I don't remember the exact rank, but somewhere around 60. So just because of we are conducting elections, just because we are following a democratic method, we are not democratic 100%. And America's rank, that is nowhere even 20th. Okay, they are somewhere 25th. That is their rank. In America, if a president is there, we can ask, Mr. President, you can ask question like that. In India, you cannot imagine that. Okay, 1 hour before, 1 hour after that, okay, even you have to stoop down. So this is what our mentality, because British people gave freedom, we haven't used that yet. But still, America is not a top performing democratic country and democratic index. They are somewhere 25th, that is their rank. So that is the problem. What I would like to say here is, democracy cannot be, solution to all the problems. For example, democracies are less in Africa. Of course, some countries may embrace democracy, but it does not mean that they are going to have real democracy. Legitimate government will be there. What is legitimate government? One person having all the power, like a dictatorship. You hold elections and people vote for them. How they vote, that's a different thing. They may be corrupt, they may be forced, that's a different thing. But on the paper, it's a democracy. So that's why it is a solution to the legitimate government. Problems of democracy, to have a legitimate government. But for example, all the sections of the society cannot participate in election, they cannot run in election, they are not allowed. Okay. So a poor guy wants to run in election, their rich people don't allow him. So there is no opportunity for him to participate in the democracy. So you cannot say that that is a true democracy, just it is there on the paper. So we say it is like a legitimate, okay, and it cannot answer problems of a state malfunction. It may be corruption, it may be decentralization, okay, or I told you just a while ago, important area where most of the democracies are failing is, you may think corruption, that's all okay. This what we call disparities in wealth, okay, unequal distribution of wealth. Some are super rich, some are below poverty line. That is the problem of democracies. Most of the democracies are failing in this index, this parameter. That is the important thing. So when these governments, when these democracies are not addressing these problems, that is a failure of democracy. Okay, on the paper we are a democracy, like that. So most of the countries are not democratic, some countries are democratic, but they seem to solve the problem of legitimate government, but actually they are not addressing the problems of the malfunctioning of the government. What is also emerging in Africa's democracies is the incapacity of citizens to organize and hold leaders account. That means accountability means answerable. So video audio stopped, 7:32. Check it out. Thank you, Kritika, we are checking. No, Kritika, let me know, is it has it stopped or it's okay for us here? No problem, no problem. Okay, she has some problem. Okay. When they violate the constitution, take actions that undermine stability, human rights. So if a politician is corrupt, if a politician is not accessible, people cannot question them. Democracy is all about questioning, but this questioning is possible only in movies. But when it comes to reality, if you question, okay, even if you question on Facebook, the other day you will disappear. So that is the problem with democracy. You can even see in India also. Okay, again we are deviating here. There is something called sedition law. We are largest democracy in India. If some of the governments, it can be state government or a central government, whatever government, sometimes if you express your opinion that a particular thing is not good, it is not done correctly by the government, all governments or all government officials not, they don't take it in a democratic way, in a spirit. So immediately this law is applied. Actually, this is a horrible, even Supreme Court was not happy with this law. This law it started in British era, that when Indians are fighting against British people for freedom, they came up with this one. So those who are fighting for freedom are put in jail in the name of sedition. That means, sedition means actually you are encouraging or enticing the people towards some violence, that is sedition. But for British people, fighting for freedom is encouraging violence. They are keeping in jail. So, now our own governments are also acting like British people. The beautiful thing about democracy is you can criticize. You can criticize. Democracy does not say that you have to give explanation for your criticism. See, some people criticize with logic, some people criticize without logic. They may be supporters of other party. The important thing in democracy is actually when you have to criticize government based on issues, that is important criticism. But people criticize that I belong to this party and I will always criticize you, that is wrong. But whether it is wrong or correct, what democracy says, you have the right to criticize. But governments come up with a sedition law which is outdated. Supreme Court asked them, please you just do away with this law, this is not correct. So, the point why we are discussing is, even in Africa, you cannot ask the government or politicians, you cannot make them accountable or responsible for their actions. That is a problem. Yeah, even if something said on online. So, no reasonably democratic government in Africa has been from corrupt clientele modes of resource distribution. So, we do not see most of the governments are corrupt, and then they do not distribute the resources or wealth in a equal manner. What needs to be done? So, there are some simple solutions which may not happen, but what are the problems? Business people will have to create industries. So, for any country, as we discussed many times, steel, coal, iron industries are important, and then based on the other importance other industries can start. Industrialization is important. Teachers will have to provide education that African children need to. I do not think this is logical. So, try to understand. The reason is teachers are not decision makers, understand. So, government, again it is in the hands of government, they should have a clear roadmap for education, how to improve education, and in that teachers are part of that, you understand. So, most of the African schools, if you see the schools in America and other countries, there is a lot of difference. There you see lot of acres of and then infrastructure, but in African countries, even our countries, we do not see, only a few states are doing well, and most of the times no infrastructure, nothing. So, teachers are not that big decision makers who can actually show impact on the nation's education. What they can do is they can do their job, but you need infrastructure, you need actual curriculum. So, you need a lot of research in that. That is why you can say education must be improved. How it must be improved, that is a big thing to discuss. Then we all know Africa is lagging behind in education and healthcare, industrialization. These are all very much known to everybody. African political leaders will have to make changes that will reduce corruption, generate the laws. Policies, practices needed to encourage these proceedings, non-political efforts. So, to reduce corruption and generate laws, policies and practices. And parents will have to give their children love, security, discipline. Again, I do not okay, subscribe to this opinion. By just giving love to children, they may love children and children may love parents, but what about economy? Okay, it has nothing to do with development. Security, discipline. As I told you, as teacher is not such a big decision maker on education, even parents are not that in a situation to, they may take care of their own children or something like that, but what about whole children? Because if you see country like Somalia, children are starving. Children are starving. Why would parents leave them starving? Because they don't have money, they don't have food. So, what can they do? That sort of parents. So, what I say is, these are, see, when you are writing answers, you be specific to the questions. When you are showing solutions, be specific, don't be generic. So, when you are, if you want to write an essay on okay, corruption, just write we have to remove the corruption, we have to eradicate corruption, means how do you do that? That is important. Some practical ideas and strategies. So, be specific in your solutions. African citizens will have to create popular pressure that pushes African governments towards these necessary changes. So, first there should be three important: industrialization, education and healthcare. There they have to make some changes and improve those sectors, and then you can see other sectors improving. Scramble of Africa and redrawal of boundaries. I have even, we already discussed that. Sometimes it is, a question is asked in world history, that these boundaries are very artificial. Okay, these boundaries are created in a very artificial way by European colonial masters. So, when they came, okay, so wherever they occupied, that is a boundary of the country. As I already told you, the difference between a nation and a state. A nation is much more emotional. That means it is related to history, culture, understand, all the sort of things. But here, a state is it's a political entity. Political entity. British, I mean European colonials came to Africa. Wherever they occupied, that became boundary. For example, you take one country, okay, there are 2 to 3 tribes which are very similar. You may call it one nation. European country comes and they occupy half of the country, the next half are 1/4 they cannot occupy. Then the part which they cannot occupy, that becomes a separate country or something. So, now this part becomes one country. This boundary is created by the colonial masters because they occupied it. So, like that, for their convenience and for their occupation, all these boundaries are created and they are artificial boundaries. There is no common culture, common history. Okay. So, nothing common, that is the problem, and it is going to boomerang in future, backfire in the form of what we see civil rights movement, I mean we see civil wars, see a lot of civil wars. That is what happened. Africa is full of civil wars. When these colonial people left, lot of civil wars there. So, that is the problem. So, redrawal of boundaries. Colonialism has destabilizing effect on number of ethnic groups. This is what I tell you, when you have 2 tribes or 3 tribes, a tribe belongs to a race or something. So, the race is nothing but ethnic, means ethnic. So, ethnic groups, that is still being felt in African politics. Before European influence, national borders were not much of a concern. Before European came, national borders were not much of a concern, with Africans generally following the practice of other areas of the world, such as the Arabian Peninsula, where a group's territory was congruent. Congruent means side by side with its military and trade influence. But when Europeans came, insistence of drawing borders around territories to isolate them from those of other colonial powers. Okay, because there are many colonial powers in Africa, they are all occupying each country. So, to isolate other African colonial countries, they are creating the boundaries. Those boundaries are very illogical and artificial. Often had the effect of separating otherwise congruous political groups, forcing traditional enemies to live side by side with no buffer between them. Okay. So, now all those colonial countries are actually maybe villain, maybe enemies, they have to be there side by side, no buffer in between them. For example, Congo River appears to be natural geographic boundary. They were groups that otherwise shared a language, culture, other similarity living on both sides. The division of the land between Belgium and France along the river isolated the groups. So, we know Congo River is there, okay, on the both the sides there are tribes, 1 or 2, 3 tribes are there. Normally, all these tribes are similar, they were living in like a very good community. When Belgium and France, they shared like this is my territory, my country, this is your country. So, Congo River is very easy there, like a boundary. So, on the other side of the country, okay, you take that territory, on this side I will take this territory. Normally, all the tribes on the banks of this Congo River are similar, they share a similar culture, history, everything. Now, they are divided just because of Belgium and France. Those who lived in sub-Saharan Africa traded across the continent for centuries, often found themselves crossing borders that existed only on European maps. This is the same case with the countries of Saharan and sub-Saharan countries. African continent in 1914, that means just at the time of World War started, 14 to 18 World War started. After World Wars, these boundaries were created, first World War, second World War, a lot of confusion took place in Africa as well as Europe. It was more confusion in Europe. In the late 19th century, European imperial powers engaged in major territorial scramble. We all know that African scramble. All the countries were scrambling for colonies in Africa. That is famously known as African scramble. Most of the continent creating many colonial states, nation states, and leaving only 2 independent nations. So, there were only 2 independent nations, Liberia, an independent state partly settled by African Americans, and Ethiopia. Europeans often altered the local balance of power, created ethnic divides where they did not previously exist. So, British people are very good at this. What is that? Ethnic divide. That means, before Europeans came, particularly before British people came, some tribes were united. You know, that happened in India also. Many kingdoms were there, and these kingdoms were difficult for them. As a small country, as I told you, there are 1 lakh people, we are 30 crore people. How can they control all these people? So, they have divided. We all know very simple history. When there is a war between 2 kingdoms, they support 1 kingdom with their weapons and arms and ammunition. For giving that support, that king gives some land, some territories for them. Like that, they used to help lot of kingdoms, lot of kings, they used to get some lands. So, once they held a lot of territories like that. When they themselves became powerful, they started occupying all the country. So, how did they do it? They divided. This is what we call divide and rule policy. Divide and rule policy. So, British people used the same strategy even in Africa. Here, 2 kingdoms or many kingdoms divide and rule policy. There, it may be tribes, between tribes. So, they have divided tribes. Okay. Previously, that enmity did not exist. These people created that. Introduced a cultural dichotomy detrimental to the native inhabitants in the areas they controlled. Okay. For example, in what are now Rwanda, Burundi, 2 ethnic groups, Hutus, Tutsis, we have already discussed. These are 2 tribes, Hutus and Tutsis, had merged into 1 culture by the time German colonists had taken control. When German colonialist people were ruling, they merged into 1 tribe. There was not a very strict segregation on who is considered Hutu, who is considered Tutsi. This was not a strict line, but a general rule of thumb. One could move from Hutu to Tutsi. Belgians introduced a racialized system. So, we thought Belgium is not as cruel as other like Great Britain, but they were also cruel. What they did? They have created racial system. Like whoever looks like Europeans, little bit height, okay, fairer skin, ample height. There is no definition for fairer skin. If you think all Europeans have fairer skin, that is not correct. They may be white in color, but all white skinned people are not fair skinned. But for them, they think they are very superior people. And then narrow noses were seen as more Hamitic, then belonged to those people closest to Tutsis in ancestries. So, one thing you have to understand is this Belgian people came, and those tribes actually they merged into 1. Okay. Now, this Belgian people came and they have showed that these are Hutus, these are Tutsis, again they have divided them. Because if you divide, it will be helpful for them, divide and rule policy. So, Belgian people also used this policy. World War I actually formed German colonies in Africa. After Germany was defeated, all Germany colonies were given to either Great Britain or France. Mussolini, it was the only country which was not colonized, and that was colonized by Mussolini. During World War, he colonized it, Ethiopia. I think these are not very visible. So, I do not want to discuss all this because it is not very important content, because we have a lot of years for each country in Africa. So, it will take 54 countries if we discuss, okay, more than that. So, just I would like to discuss communism and socialism also. So, this is like every year we have already discussed in the beginning of the chapters 6 to 7 countries we discussed that, and that is enough. Now, here year wise how countries got their independence and how they got freed, all this matter is not that important. Okay. So, as we have only 1 hour, I would like to the important thing which you understand from this communism and socialism is, you will come to know that slight difference between socialism and communism. Most of the people, even in Russian Revolution, Lenin first they started as a socialist country, then they became communist country. So, what are the actual differences? Very subtle differences are there. What is this? So, communism and its spread, how it has spread. See, first of all, communism is both political as well as economical. Socialism is mainly economical, that is not political. Okay, that is the important thing you have to understand. Communism is a theory or system of social organization, how society must be organized, in which property is owned by the community and each person contributes, receives according to their ability and needs. Okay. Actually, it says by the community because it is communalism, but you can write a state in the place of community. Okay, is owned by the state. Definition slowly changes. That is what happens. Communism means everything is owned, dictated by state. So, that slowly became dictatorship. Each person contributes, receives according to. Okay, communism is a philosophy developed by Karl Marx. You know, Prussia in Germany, biggest states, he was born there in Prussia, and this guy is known as father of communism. Online students, are you aware the book he wrote, Karl Marx? What is the book he wrote, Karl Marx? Let me know. Welfare of Nations is Adam Smith. He is father of economics. What are, okay, what areas did communism spread to? We have seen that it is very easy for us to understand. Russia is the country where communism started, and then it you see that Adriatic, okay, Sea, Baltic Sea to Adriatic Sea, okay, like this. What Winston Churchill famously called Iron Curtain. So, these are all the areas in Europe, and then China is the country in Asia which has spread communism. North Korea is the country, Vietnam is the country, Cuba is the country. Okay, these are all the countries where communism has spread. Even you can take India also, particularly Kerala and West Bengal. Okay, then the first communist state was established in Europe, 1917. Communism established in France during Paris Commune, 1871. Very interesting thing is, France is known as a capitalistic country, but even in France, communism was there. But France did not become communist country because it's close friends with Britain and America. It never became, but the signs, early signs were there. Even before Russia, we see communism in France. So, established in France during Paris Commune. You know this commune or mir. Actually, in Russia, poor farmers, peasants were not ready to pay taxes to the landlords. And then not only they refused to pay taxes, but when they were forced, they killed landlords. They killed landlords, and they took all the land. They have distributed it in that particular village or area. That was known as a mir or commune. Mir or commune. So, we normally think all Russian revolution is all about workers and workers struggle, proletariat struggle. Workers were called by proletariats by Karl Marx. We think communism is all about workers and workers struggle, but many people say that it is farmers, peasants who are very much natural communists. The reason is, knowingly, unknowingly, they started that concept, pooling all the land and just used, that is used by, this is the definition. What is that? Collective ownership. Then Soviet Union, after its communist revolution, Russia became Soviet Union, while technically collective nations adhering to similar form. Soviet Union at the heights consisted of Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Kazakhstan. All these countries look similar, sound similar. Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Estonia. This is a very interesting small country, and it gives e-citizenship also. Citizenship. So, e-citizenship, online citizenship. Very advanced small country. Latvia, Lithuania. These are all the countries, 15 countries part of USSR. They are all disintegrated in 1991. Actually, it is Das capital. Das capital. You might have written, I am not aware, Communist Manifesto, but very famous book is Das Capital. Yeah, Anjali Das. Your answer is correct, Anjali Das. Then Soviet supported communist parties took over in Poland. So, these are all satellite countries. Okay. Poland, Albania, you can say Bulgaria also, add Bulgaria also, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Hungary. Okay. So, then this communism even spread to China and East Asia. What is East Asia? You can see East Asia, which country is a communist country in East Asia? This is East Asia. What countries are there? North Korea. Okay. So if you see China, North Korea, Russia, these countries are potential countries to bring world war. Okay. They are the dictatorship countries. They don't have any problem with the elections. Whatever they do, that is accepted by the people. Communists also spread to East Asia largely through influence of China. It is because of this bad guy named China under Mao. So, just like Gandhi in India, whatever you ask in China, they say Mao. Okay. So, they are obsessed with Mao because he was so popular there. Communism in the eastern part of Asia spread in the following countries. North Korea, okay, leading to Korean war between them and US. Okay. So, we all know South Korea, North Korea was one country earlier, and Russia, China had a lot of influence on Korea, and US, okay, doesn't want Korea to become another communist country. So, they supported South Korea. Otherwise, there would be no country called South Korea, and there would be no BTS band. Okay. So, you all have to thank USA people for creating a South Korea, because these days all teenage children, I mean even adults also, they are obsessed with the BTS. I heard many people who wanted to go to South Korea. I told them, be careful, North Korea is beside that country. Okay. So, the point is, as America did not like a communist country, I mean Korea becoming a communist country, they supported South Korea, and then a country named South Korea is created. Or otherwise, today all those companies, Samsung, okay, LG, the big companies, okay, Hyundai, all those companies, South Korea is so advanced. People think only Japan is advanced. South Korea is so advanced. Now, the point is, it is because of America, South Korea is created. Okay. And then communism spread to neighboring Cambodia, Laos, African countries. North Vietnam conquered South, established unified communist Vietnam. So, Vietnam also, North and South. Very interestingly, North is becoming communist, whether it is North Korea or North Vietnam. East Asia, Mongolia became communist in 1924. Okay. So, great Genghis Khan land, Mongolia also became communist country. Maintained close ties with Soviet Union. Cold War also saw communism spread to Africa. So, we have seen that problems in Africa chapter, that very interesting thing is, when a country becomes poor, that is very prone to become communism. That is the reason America actually helped many countries, otherwise they would not have helped. So, they always thought after Second World War, most of the countries economy was in big crisis. So, America thought, if these countries are going to become very poor countries, then Soviet Union, Russia is going to change these countries into communist countries. Then they started this Marshall Plan, $13 billion, that worked very well. So, when a country becomes poor, there is a chance it may be prone to communalism. Africa and others. The Republic of Congo experienced similar turmoil, turmoil, confusion, post-independence, with the Communist Party emerging triumphant 1970. Okay, so communist government emerged. Triumphant means successful. Triumph means successful. Ethiopia became communist after a military coup in 1974. Somalia, one of the poorest countries in the world and Europe, Somalia became communist state. So you can see relation between poverty and communism. If you see poverty is one topic, Somalia will be brand ambassador. That sort of poverty. Okay. This is, we call it abject poverty, extreme poverty. Former Portuguese colonies, Angola, Mozambique, both experienced civil wars in 1975. When the Portuguese pulled out, in both countries communists came to power. Cuba, you know, that famous Fidel Castro. You see, we discussed that missile crisis. They were also supported by Russia. So he was very famous. Eastern Asia, communist ideology and parties have been present in East Asia since 1920. People of East Asia were tired of colonial rule. Okay, East Asian people were tired of colonial rule by countries that were thousands of miles away in the Western Europe. During 19th century, communism was the main political driving force in Eastern Asia. The only major country in the region that was independent of colonial rule influence was China. This is something very interesting. China was able to escape from colonial rule. We see British people always said our country is what did they say? Sun has never set in our country. Okay, that means as they colonized all the countries in the world, so in one country or the other country there will be sunrise. So they proudly said sun has never set in our kingdom. But although it is not relevant here, let me tell you one more interesting joke here. You might have heard about Shashi Tharoor, that famous MP. Okay. So once he was giving a talk in Oxford University on should Great Britain pay reparations. Reparations are paid because of war. And here the topic is, you have looted India $45 trillion. There is some, it is not correct calculation, some kind of calculation. They have looted India $45 million. So now, morally, should you pay reparations to India because of that? In that lecture, he became very famous because of that lecture. Not lecture, it's a talk, a debate. There he was saying, you proudly say sun has never set in our land because you colonized many countries. For that, what he said is, that is true, because even God cannot trust you in darkness. That is what he said. Even God cannot trust you in darkness. That is why sun will never set you in any of your colonial countries. So he was trying to mock the British people in Oxford University in front of them. Okay. So that's, they have colonized all the countries, but China somehow escaped. But Japan did not leave it. So that is something interesting thing, a small country, okay, defeating China, Manchuria, all those lands. But somehow Japan could attack, and that's a very transient thing, temporary. but it was not ruled by Great Britain or any of the European countries for a long period of time, like 50 years, 100 years, 200 years like us. So, that is a very remarkable thing about China. What could be the reason? It is a hypothesis. What I feel is, ammunition was very much invented in China itself. So, they too have got weapons. So, that may be the one of the reasons why British people. So, the biggest advantage for British people were that weapons. So, that may be the reason. It is a kind of a wild guess. He once said museums of West are called Chos bazaars in India. Yes, I remember this is also from his talk on the same debate. There are a lot of museums in Great Britain, and all those museums are filled with antiques of India and other colonial countries. So, he called those museums as Chor bazaars, because they have taken Kohinoor diamond from India. Okay. So, like that lot of valuable antiques were stolen or taken from India and other colonial countries. So, he rightly said they are all like Chor bazaars. Then now, Korean War was one of the several military conflicts. Actually, UN also got very good name because of this Korean War, because it was able to find a solution for this. As United States, its allies attempted to stop spread of communism. Following the Japanese defeat, Korea was divided into two parts. North Korea occupied by Russians, South Korea occupied by US. So, Russians set communist government in North Korea. United Nations was supporting the government of Syngman Rhee in South Korea. By the end of 1945, Russians had trained installed communist administration. See what Russians are doing, they are even training communist administration in North Korea under the leadership of Kim. So, Kim Sung, now Kim is he is like a grand son, I think. Okay. 1948, they were officially known as People's Republic of North Korea. If you see, it is like China, People's Republic of China, it is North Korea. The Republic of South Korea. Conflict began in 1950 when Communist North Korea invaded South Korea. United Nations troops had driven North Korean forces to the border of China. Okay. So, United Nations got lot of reputation because of their action there. Chinese military forces crossed the Chinese North Korean border, launched attack against the United troops. You see, can you see it here? China is attacking United troops, United Nations troops. What can you understand from that? For the sake of this North Korea, China is attacking United Nations troops. China is a P5 member in United Nations, and this P5 member is attacking UN. That is the kind of mess we have in UN, United Nations organization. 1953 war came to an end. Korea remained free from communism. The original borders of these two countries remained essentially unchanged. So, then let us see how it has spread in China. The spread of communism was given great boost in East Asia when the Republic of China became People's Republic of China 1949. So, in 1949 they became communist country. Only in the title they say People's Republic. When it comes to practice, people has nothing to do with republic, because it is all dictatorship. We have seen that Jack Ma, richest person of China, he criticized something. The very next day, he disappeared. Just some mild criticism or something, we don't even know. But what happened? The richest person of that China, okay, he disappeared for many months. Then he did not say, he stopped saying anything. That's how China functions. The period before the Second World War had been marked by bloody civil war between Communist Party and nationalist Kuomintang Party. So this party could not emerge as victorious. Okay. So before Second World War, that's why that time Japan took advantage. You understand? This civil war. When China had that internal war going on between nationalists and communists, Japan took advantage of that. At that time, it attacked Manchuria. We discussed that. It attacked Manchuria. That was correct time for Japan because of its internal struggles. It took advantage of that. Okay. Then communists eventually won, became ruling party mainland China. The new communist regime was immediately recognized by Soviet Union, Eastern Bloc countries. Eventually, though, there was a cooling of the friendship between two major communist powers of Russia and China. Russia and China also had some rivalry, but now to attack America, they are becoming friends. They have become friends. Chinese communists believed they could have true Marxist state, upholding all the values. Okay. So all countries they believe they are true Marxist. Okay, because Karl Marx is the father of communism. So communism started in Russia, but China believes our country is a true Marxist country. What is the point of becoming a true Marxist? Are you going to change the world? But they think that they are true Marxist. And then Vietnam. This Vietnam War also very bloody war in the history of the world. So Viet Minh, the Vietnam Independence League, was formed by communist leader, okay, Ho Chi Minh, to unite all the nationalist groups. 1945, communist ideology dominated in Minh movement. Okay. So Viet Minh movement reacted by marching into city of Hanoi, taking power with huge popular support. His new administration, Republic of Vietnam, was set up as direct response to the fall of China to communism. Okay. So China is influencing communism in Southeast Asia, Southwest Asia, okay, and East Asia. Communist China and the Soviet Union both recognized the communist regime of Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam. At the Geneva Conference 1954, Vietnam was temporarily divided by 17th parallel, important general knowledge, 17th parallel, until elections could be held 1956. Although communists did not yet have competence control of the country, they were in control of the half of it. Okay. Rise of socialism. Now, a political and economic system under which the means of production are owned by the community as whole. So, this is you can say collective ownership, collective try to understand communalism is both political and economical. Economical because they talk about production and distribution, okay, by state. So, that is economical. State is political. Socialism is mainly economical. Administration ensuring the equitable distribution of wealth. Okay, this is also hallmark of socialism. They always insist on equal distribution of wealth. Okay, communism says wealth should be controlled by state or the government. So, socialist economy is based on the principle of production for use, okay, not production for selling. That is capitalism. Whatever you produce, okay, it is for profit. Here, socialism, you produce because you need it, the society needs it, not for profits. To directly satisfy economic demand, human needs. Okay. Objects are valued by their use value as opposed to the principle of production for profit. This is capitalism. Production for profit is a capitalism. So, it opposes, it is only for use for value and accumulation of capital. So, this is capitalism. When did socialism arise? Socialism began as a response to dire poverty and inhumane working conditions. Okay. Actually, we think it's all started in Russia, socialism or a communism. But even before Russian Revolution, we see the signs of a socialism, because Industrial Revolution took place earlier than all these revolutions. Okay, when somewhere in 1750, this Industrial Revolution continued. Now, you can say even now continuing almost all 150 years. Okay, so there when there are a lot of companies, workers were supposed to work like animals. Very interestingly, women were there and children were there. There is no concept of child labor at that time. Factories liked children. The reason is they may be given less wages. So, all these problems actually they gave birth to socialism. We know what is the workers' main claim agenda. They wanted good working conditions, okay, reasonable wages, and then 8 hours working hours. This is main workers problems. They wanted this. So, now when did socialism arise? Socialism really took off in mid-century, spurred by the writings of German philosopher Karl Marx, the rise of labor unions. So, he used workers as proletariat. One of the first thinkers called socialist was Robert Owen. Okay? So, these people are known as utopian socialists. That means socialism is not there anywhere, but they were thinking about, imagining about that. So, first of all, try to understand utopia means actually it was not there in English actually. A poet named Thomas Gray, used this word first. Thomas Gray. So, the meaning of this word is It is an imaginary place where everything is perfect. It is imaginary place where everything is perfect. This word can also be used in the sense that impractical. When you say some idea is utopian idea, that is impractical. Where do you see everything is perfect? No, you cannot see anywhere everything is perfect. Whether it may be land or a country or anything, everything perfect is not possible. That is why it is impractical. But in this context, how can you understand that Robert Owen is an Ethiopian socialist? The reason is, first socialist country is Russia, but before Russian revolution, these people started thinking about socialism. That is why it is, they are imagining about it, how socialism, how perfect socialism should be. That is why they are known as Ethiopian socialists. So, Robert Owen. How did socialism spread? Industrial revolution in England, which began during the last quarter of the 18th century, created miserable conditions of the working class. Privileged sections trained the society, weird outrage with concept of equitable distribution. You know, when you talk about socialism, that means equal distribution of wealth. Who are the people concerned about this socialism? Who are the people concerned about it? Normally, privileged section, because privileged section has got lot of properties. Now, because of socialism, they may have to lose it. That is why they are concerned with equitable distribution of wealth. Henry de Saint-Simon, okay? Saint-Simon was French social theorist and founder of French socialism. After Robert Owen, so he is next French socialist. Ideas Simon for the reconstruction of the society were conditioned by the French Revolution and feudal military system still prevalent in France. He proposed a new and positive reorganization of the society. He was always talking about reconstructing the society, reorganization of society, controlled by the chiefs of industries with scientists in the role of priests. So, his idea of socialism is different. Simon's call for science of society similar to natural sciences influenced his disciple Auguste Comte and the development of sociology, economics as fields of scientific study. So, for him scientific study is economics and sociology. Now, Francis Maria Charles Fourier. Okay? So, Charles Fourier was French philosopher, okay, an influential early socialist thinker, later associated with he was also one of the Ethiopian socialist. His perspective, criticism of existing society, his vision for the future made him inspired prophet of 19th century socialism. He advocated see, this is the word you have to write, reorganization, reconstruction of society, based on idea that natural passions of man would result in social harmony. Natural passions of man would result in social harmony. Fourier believed that he had discovered the scientific laws which govern social interaction. He ignored industrialism. So, very interesting philosophy here is, he felt industrialism or industrial revolution, all this passing phase. He always believed agriculture economy, agrarian economy. So, he said he believed in agriculture society. So, his view is any society needs food, food is possible only through agriculture. So, he did not believe in industries or industrial development. He thought it is a passing phase, industrialization is going to end. But was he correct? He was not correct. Pierre Joseph Proudhon, Joseph Proudhon was French libertarian socialist. So, there are a lot of French philosophers. A journalist whose doctrines became the later radical anarchist theory. So, you know radical means, radicals expect a very fast change. Anarchism means there is no order. Have you heard anarchy? Have you heard the word anarchy means no order, no system. Proudhon opposed both capitalism and state ownership of property. What is state ownership of property? This is nothing but communalism. That means he did not support either capitalism or communalism, arguing for small scale property ownership with peasants and artisans. So, his theory is different. He wanted small scales to be the focus. Who should be associated with that? Peasants and the artisans. He was against both communalism as well as capitalism. He advocated the replacement of state government. What is this? Communalism, with loose federation of communes and local municipalities. It is something like decentralization. He wanted to remove whole state government. He believed that property should be equally distributed, limited in size. This is socialism, equally distributed and limited to that actually used by individuals, families, workers association. We have discussed this Robert Owen already. He is the first one, earliest thinker. We have discussed that. Was a Welsh manufacturer. What is Welsh manufacturer? You know this Wales, one of the islands of Great Britain, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, England. So, those who belong to Wales are known as Welsh. Welsh manufacturer turned into reformer, one of the most influential earlier 19th century advocates of. So, it is repeated. It is repeated. He was one of the pioneers of Ethiopian socialism. His impact spanned both Europe and United States. Every social movement in England on behalf of the workers links itself to his name. So, he is very powerful, important. Every social movement in England is linked to him. So, he is the earliest thinker of socialism. He felt these three are very problematic for the spread of socialism. What are they? Private property. Socialism is against private property. And religion, present form of marriage. He forced through 1819, after 5 years fighting, the first law limiting hours of labor for women and children. So, again men are ignored. Of course, women are ignored in French Revolution. Here men are ignored. First of all, why to involve children in factories? Limiting working hours is not great. First you have to remove them, but there was no concept called child labor at that time. He introduced it as transition measures to complete communist organization of a society. Transition measures means to become a communist organization. Slowly we have to take these steps, measures. Of course, that is one of the important limiting the working hours to 8 hours for everybody is one of the what we saw the agendas of that workers during Russian Revolution. Then Owen's communism was based on purely business foundation, the outcome of commercial calculation. This guy is also important, Louis Blanc, a French Ethiopian societist, noted for theory, workers controlled social workshops. You can even think about he advocated this contest in this content, you do not see that, but you can understand he also proposed this what we see cooperative societies. Cooperative societies like you start a company, there is no employer or employee, all are employees, all are employers. So, whatever profits you get, you divide between you, that is cooperative. But some critics felt it is not easy for private people to start cooperatives, government should help. Okay. So, here social workshops. Blanc believed that competitive capitalism then developing in France tended to stunt the human personality, pitting one man against other, driving the weaker to the wall. That means, what capitalism believes, every man has potential, we have to leave them, they will grow, and then production, everything must be done based on demand and supply theory. Government intervenes very rarely, but what Louis Blanc thought is, this capitalism is stunting the growth of the people and it is pushing the weak person to the wall. So, I always say you take, I will tell you an interesting difference now. Okay. You see, there are two people, they wanted to see something. I think we have already discussed. Right? So, this is known as, what is equality here? We just wanted both of us to see something, that is equality. No, we support both the people, that is equality, but equity is something where disadvantaged people, they need more help from the government, that is known as equity. So, equality and equity both are not, they are not same. So, socialism supports this. How can you leave all of them, both of them, consider equal? How can they compete or how can they survive? One person has got, now you take, this is poor person, this long, tall is a rich person. So, now this poor person needs the support of a government more than the rich person. But in capitalism or even democracy, what government says is, I will help everybody to some extent. But socialism does not say that. Socialism says some people require more help, that is known as equity. So, that is the difference. I remember discussing this, I do not know where I discussed it. We will be discussing in many classes, so we get confused. And one more reason is, this is like very much a WhatsApp viral, wherever you see this WhatsApp post is there. Two people would like to see something in a stadium or something, and That is how they try to, this concept can be explained well in that manner, the difference between equity and equality. Now, you can apply it in socialism here in this way. So, he introduced a transition to the complete communist organization. We discussed with this guy Louis Blanc also. Then what are social workshops? First step towards better society would be guarantee work for everyone by establishing social workshop. Everybody should have that work. This workshop controlled by workers themselves would gradually take over most production until socialist society would come into being. Did not agree with the followers of socialist Henry Simon, who held that workers should be paid according to their performance. So, Henry Simon said workers must be paid according to their performance, but this guy Louis Blanc, no, everybody should be paid equally. But Louis Blanc is not correct here. If everybody is paid, everybody paid equally, what happens? Okay. Again, let me tell you a very free interesting anecdote here. Some of the students in a professor's class, they wanted to see socialism in a practical way. They said, you see sir, some students are getting good marks, some are getting less marks. What is this gap between haves and have-nots? Everybody should get equal marks. So, the professor said, society does not work this way. Let us see the example. What is the practical thing? They wrote exam. Okay. So, what they did is, they have added all the marks, okay, and divided by number of the people, they got one average marks. Is something like okay, it may be 60 or something. So, they said, so in this exam everybody got 60 marks. This is socialism. Why to have the gaps between haves and have-nots? So, what happened is, next exam some students, intelligent students, hard working students, why should I work for his marks? Okay, whether I work, whether I write or not, study or not, I will get average marks. Okay. So, see, and then the students who are getting less marks, who are not working hard, they said, why should I work? Why should I work? Anybody, some students are working for me. Anyway, they are working for me. That means it is a total collapse, collateral damage. That means in socialism, if you strictly follow socialism, both hard working people and lazy people both stop working. Socialism, that is why socialism, communism looks very particularly, they look fantastic on the paper. When it comes to practice, this is what happened. So more tests are conducted, and there comes a day that all students fail, all are getting fail marks, because everybody stopped preparing. Okay. So, that is why, as I told you, any country should not follow any of this 100%, you should mix it up. Okay. Communism, socialism is also good. It does not mean that they are all going to become dictators. You can take those communist principles, socialist principles, help those who are poor people, but you do not have to become a communist country, and give freedom, private property, private people. You do not have to become a hardcore capitalist country. You can mix it up, and these days no country is following truly to that title, communism or socialism or capitalism. They are all mixing it up. Okay. Then comes our Bond, James Bond, he is important, Karl Marx. Okay. We are discussing all this because of him. He was born in Prussia, in Germany at that time. So, 1818, variously described as economist, philosopher, historian, sociologist, revolutionary, what not, everything. Marx theorized that all human history was defined by, so remember this, he said all human history, it is a class struggle. Class struggle means rich people, poor people, middle class people, this is class. This is class. Communist theory is they wanted a state without class. No rich people, no poor people, no middle class, only one class, like that. So he said all the history is about a class struggle. So remove the class. Ruling class and working class. We further argued working class would eventually overthrow the ruling class, in which all property was owned by society as a whole. German philosopher, revolutionist socialist Karl Marx published the Communist Manifesto. Okay, that's why our students are saying Communist Manifesto. Okay, Das Kapital, anti-capitalistic works that form on the basis of Marxism. So, online students, you are always right. Marxism. Marx's political social philosophy rests on the three basic principles. So now, historical materialism. What is materialism? Property, money, all this is materialism. Okay. The central concept of Marxist philosophy may be seen as scientific socialism, dialectics, materialism, and blending of structure and action. System of production, exchange of goods define the structure of the society. Okay. So, let me go little fast, I have to complete it. Online students, please bear with me. Class struggle. Marx believed that continuous fight between haves and have-nots only cease after political revolution, not by gradual change. So, he did not believe in gradual change. He wanted a revolution, very fast revolution. Marx's theory of class struggle, vital part of the explanation of capitalist production. A class is made up of people who are in the same position, like middle class, poor, working class, some different classes. Theory of surplus value. What is surplus value? For example, as a worker, you work for the company. So, your work has some value, but you are adding some value to production. But are you getting the same wage, same value of wage? No. Your contribution may be more and company's contribution to you is less. If everything is equal, how can they get profits? How can they get profits? That difference between your value to the contribution to the company and contribution wage to you, the difference between is surplus value. That concept is a surplus value that is exploited by the company. Okay. Marx was believer in abstraction, systematic analysis, successive approximations to reality, to complex grasp directly. Third Marxian political theme is questionable support for bourgeois revolution. Bourgeois, I have already discussed it. Third, middle class, emergence of a middle class is known as a bourgeois. These are typical terms used by communists and socialists. Proletariat, that is for workers. For emerging middle class is known as bourgeois. They were against emerging middle class also. Okay. So, pronunciation is bourgeois. Final area of Marxist theory is that socialism, communism, the future forms of society will replace capitalism. They thought it will replace capitalism. We have a very important concept here, the differences between communism and socialism. So, we need to discuss that. Criticism of traditional Marxist. What is the criticism? So, class structure is more complex than bourgeois proletariat. Okay, class structure is more complex. In Western nations, increasingly developing nations, there is extensive middle class who have stocks and shares invested in corporations. So, you cannot say class system is more complex. For example, you are a middle class person, you invest in corporations. So, how can you say that now you are investing in corporations? Corporations are, I mean, they are above middle class. Okay. So, all your investments are clubbed here. You cannot divide that they are middle class, they are poor people, they are rich people like that. So, what they mean to say, this is very complex structure. Capitalism today is less exploitative. Henry Ford says capitalism is not that exploitative. When you work very well, I can pay you more. When I can pay you more, I can produce more goods. When there are more goods are there, you will get more work. So, it is not exploitative. You know, Henry car manufacturer, he told that. Realized paying his workers good wages is not exploitative. He was defending capitalist system. Economic critics have argued that any society where everyone holds equal wealth, there can be no material intensity to work. So, when I told you just like a class example where socialism failed, hard working people stopped, lazy people also stopped. So, when everybody is getting equal wages, why would people work hard? So, hard working people should have incentives, because one does not receive rewards for work well done. So, they further argue incentives increase productivity. When you incentives to hard working worker, productivity increases. Classist Marxist theory has been criticized for being economically deterministic. Marx argued that economic laws determined not only the shape of society, but also direction of the history itself. So, now what is the other problem? Less equality and freedom. We think there is equality in socialism and freedom, but they say communist revolutions in Eastern Europe did not lead to greater equality and freedom, as Marx would have hoped. So, where is freedom and equality in Russia and North Korea, China? They talk about equality and freedom, but it is not possible. Less specific. Finally, many sociologists today would agree Marx's grand theorizing. Okay? Grand theories. I told you many times, it looks good on paper, theories, not in practice. About the world is no longer relevant rather than researching with the intention of creating the perfect society. So, the problem with Marx is, instead of searching for a perfect society, he says this world is not relevant, this is not correct. Okay, very pessimistic. Focusing our attention much on specific and localized issues. So, first international, second international are the meetings. Okay, first big communist party meeting held in London, that is known as first international. Second international took place in Paris. It took place in Paris. I would like to discuss more important content. So, I am skipping there. Now, you see this Marxism and Leninism. So, Lenin is the first dictator of Russia. Russia is the first communist country. So, his Marxism, Leninism is known as his communism known as Marxism and Leninism. Adaptation of Marxist developed Lenin. Okay. The core ideological features of Marxism, Leninism include belief that revolutionary proletarian class would not emerge automatically from capitalism. He felt revolutions of communism or socialism would not come from capitalism. Okay, I mean automatically. Lenin believed capitalism was going through final phase. He felt capitalism is going to end. Ideology of Marxism-Leninism became popular in Russia after Bolshevik Revolution, which we discussed. Now, important, please, online students, just bear with me. This is last class, so I would like to discuss these features. You must know these differences. What is the difference between communism and nationalism? Communism, socialism are umbrella terms referring to left wing. Okay, economic thought opposing capitalism. We know they are all opposite to capitalism. Socialism at its core an economic philosophy. I told you this one. Whereas communism is economics as well as political. Requirement that government be the central owner, decision maker. That is communism. Communism sees complete abolishment of class. So, what do we call it? Classless society. That is communism. Okay. And then socialism sees diminishment here, but class distinctions will be there. It will be there. So, communism, classless society, here there will be classes. Personal and public. Communism views all property as being public property. So, in communism, you understand one thing, communism is the extension of socialism. It is extreme in every way. Socialism also believes collective ownership like communist own. But communist says there is no private property, there should not be private property. In socialism, there will be some private property, but most will be owned by government. There will be private, but here no scope for private property. Okay, so that is and then personal property, but all industrial production capacity must be owned by government. That is socialism says big companies, big production must be controlled by government. But in communism, everything must be controlled by government. Then here communism wants revolution and radical change. Socialism wants a democratic, slow transition from one phase to one phase, so transition. So, transition from capitalism being violent revolution, but socialism rather sees a gradual transition. That is the difference. These are very important, that is why I am extending my time here. Okay. So, that is the end of this topic. Okay. There is only one chapter left, but that is not that important, world populations. We have almost covered 24 topics out of 25. Okay. So, that is the end of world history. We will meet again with a different chapter, paper, but not immediately. We will get that information soon. Thank you all online students. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. That is the end of the topic. Okay, any questions? Thank you, Kritika. Thank you, Charanpreet. Thank you all. Thank you, Deepali Sharma. Thank you. Abhinaya, thank you.